Hey guys, Functional P with a video on 5 mistakes that people make at lower elo. Now this video is special because this topic was something that I covered originally in an article for Cloth 5. Now I'm sure there's a fair number of you guys that don't even know that I write articles for this website or don't care about it or whatever, so you probably wouldn't have seen the article that I've written. However, this specific article got quite popular, so I figured why not make a video out of it. Now I won't be doing this for every article that I write, so if you are interested in the stuff that I do make, then you can follow me on my Facebook and my Twitter because I announce them there when I do create new articles, or you can just lurk around the Cloth 5 website itself and you'll see when the articles go live there. So everyone knows that the higher elo you get, the better the players are. What people often don't understand, even those that are at high elo, is what exactly creates the skill difference between the top leagues and the lower leagues. I've recently had the pleasure of playing at lower elo, both on my account that I used to make the Escaping Elo Hell videos that you might have seen, and also for my NA Smurf account. Throughout my playing experience on those accounts, I've been able to draw several parallels between the players that I'm used to at around Diamond 1 elo and those that are in Bronze, Silver, Plat or what have you. So this is a list of 5 commonly created crimes in the lower ranks, but this also does extend to the higher leagues, albeit to a lesser degree. Now these are not the only mistakes people make, and there is no particular order to this list. So the first mistake that people make is to have poor item builds. Wealth is relative. You can be the richest man in the world, but if you spend all your money trying to revive Axl Rose's music career, then you're gonna have nothing. A similar concept applies to LoL. It doesn't matter how well you farm. If your first item on Tryndamere or a Mana Manipulator and Assault Boots, then you may as well have farmed nothing. Now that's quite an extreme example, but you get my point. The biggest mistake I see in relation to poor item choices is that people will buy the same items each and every game. They saw a pro rush X item on Y champion, and so they spend the rest of their days rushing X item, even when a different item would be a better choice. Item builds are not static things. They should adapt with each game. You should be buying items that are suited to your lane. You should also be buying items considering who's fed on the enemy team, what your teammates have bought, so on and so forth. By getting the most out of your items, you directly improve your chances of being effective and winning games. Now, the second mistake of lower elos is how incorrectly people view champion select. I'm sure everyone is all too familiar with people saying mid or feed, no support runes or champs on this account, sorry. Oh my god, you banned my Vayne, okay, time to troll. These issues are frustrating, but are just a product of a wonderful liberty known as anonymity, alongside a pinch of dickheadism. However, what I'm referring to is not the trolls, but the whole notion that the game is won or lost in Champion Select. Whereas there's an undeniable strategic element of Champion Select that influences the flow of the game, that strategy is really not too important in solo queue, especially at the lower elos. So here's a phrase that I like to throw around that I believe to be true. A player that is experienced and comfortable on a mediocre champion is much more valuable to your team than a player that is inexperienced with an OP champion. Now, not saying that OP picks aren't a problem, but they are most certainly not the determining factors of won games. There are much more important things to be worrying about than if that Zac squeezed through. In the same way, you shouldn't be picking a champion just because you view it to be overpowered. In my experience in lower elo, there are many more games lost due to people picking OP champs and not knowing how to play them than there are games won due to those overpowered champions stomping. In my opinion, there are 3 guidelines for picking a champion. Pick what you're good at, pick what your team needs, and pick what works well versus the enemy team. Now the first rule of that list is always the most important. It doesn't matter if the Mumu is the perfect pick for your team and against the enemy team. If you can't play him, then you're going to be shedding the wrong kind of tears. Now the third mistake is how people overrate and underrate certain objectives. Now this one is fairly straightforward. The objective control at lower elos is, quite bluntly, pretty hideous. The good times to take Dragon are often dismissed and the inadvisable times to take Drag are leapt upon. So here is a quick list of objectives in terms of value. Inhibitors, then Baron, then Towers, then Dragon, and then buffs. Now this list is not 100% set in stone and there are times when order could change, but you won't go too wrong if you stick to it. I'm actually convinced that the dragon is the overlord of the lower elos. People worship that winged lizard like the Sims worship Rosebud. For some reason, dragon seems extremely appealing to people at lower elo when you happen to also be pushing down a tower. In general, I feel as though people undervalue the structural objectives such as inhibs and towers and overvalue the Baron and dragon. The fourth mistake is a player's weak mechanics and positioning. I would say that a fair number of players would be able to climb a whole league if their personal mechanics were better. If I had a quid for every time someone missed a CS that was free, I would have enough wonga to buy out Riot Games and implement a system where you had to pass say, if you don't hit 70 CS by 10 minutes in this custom game versus bots, you can't play ranked test. Seriously, there is no reason for you to be missing CS. Farming is the most efficient and reliable way to be generating income or getting fed, and it's something that should really not be passed up. A good number to hit, excluding junglers and supports of course, is 70 CS by 10 minutes. Even better if you can hit 80 CS. 70 is really not that much to be getting, it just takes practice. Go into custom games and work on last hitting, it will do you wonders. Aside from last hitting, there are other sides to mechanics that are lacking from lower elo, most of which manifest in the lane phase. Harassing, or lack thereof, is a big one. There have been times when I overextended for a CS or made some other kind of mistake and the opposing laner would leave me alone and not touch me. Similarly, people often overextend for CS and soon find themselves zoned from the wave. The problem is that lower elo players are used to playing versus other lower elo players that don't punish their mistakes. Therefore, they keep making these same mistakes and only when playing versus a better player do they get punished for them. You may ask what you can do to learn from these mistakes if it's impossible to recognize them. Truth is, it's hard. However, not all of these mistakes are a big obstacle for you at your current elo. The more you climb, the more of these mistakes you'll be punished for and the more you'll have to improve your game. That's what climbing leagues and being a better player is all about. I mean, I personally still have a lot to learn and I'm still finding weaknesses in my own play. Although another good method is to watch streams and draw parallels between what you do and what the streamers do. Oftentimes, those differences are where you could be improving. Try to put yourself in the shoes of one of the players on the stream. Try to imagine what you will be doing in his place and see how that differs from what he actually does. Lastly, a lower elo's player's positioning in teamfights is usually quite poor. They often fail to identify incoming threats before they're actually on their face. Basically, they deal with the threats as they come rather than avoiding them in the first place, which can make carriers extremely easy to pick off. It's not uncommon to hear lower elo players say something like, I can't do anything and he just blows me up, which is half true and he does blow them up, but it's also avoidable if played correctly. So my final lower elo mistake is an inability to close out games and take advantages. It sounds odd to say that my games at higher elo are much shorter than my games at lower elo, but it's true. The reason for this is because when ahead, high elos will have a death grip on your balls and squeeze until you lose. Lower elos are more likely to just flick your nutsack every now and then. In the lower leagues, the pace of the game doesn't really change if a team is ahead. They don't force objectives, they don't tower dive losing lanes, they don't deny the enemy jungler. The downside to this style of play is that it allows the enemies to find windows of opportunity back into the game. I found myself giving a lot of instruction to my teammates about what to do in certain situations. For example, a mid laner that is winning will often just keep farming rather than pressuring the enemy laner or taking the tower. So here's a big tip for helping you to close out games. Oracles. With an oracles, you can completely deny vision from the enemy, and when behind, the enemies will play 110% passive, often unnecessarily denying themselves farm and making it so that they very rarely contest objectives like Baron and the outer towers. After all, they won't be able to track your movements to see if you're moving on to a particular tower, and by the time you show up, it's often too late. In solo queue, vision is power. So that does it for the mistakes that I see at lower elo. If you're watching this video and you can say to yourself, actually I do quite a few of these things, then this is something you can work on, you can iron out of your game to become a better player. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe and give the video a like as well. You can check me out on my Facebook and on my Twitter, and you can follow my stream on Twitch. And like I say, this was a Cloth 5 article originally, so if you do like my articles, then you can go to Cloth 5 and check out my other stuff that I've written as well. But thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in my next video.